Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Detection Dispatch, the show where detection engineers, SOC analysts, or really anyone building in the trenches of SecOps come to swap stories and sharpen their strategies, and occasionally, like my last episode, maybe even question their life choices. I am your host, Alex Hurtado, and today we've got a killer episode with our friend Jake Berkowsky, and we're going to talk about a particular topic that when I first started hosting the podcast last year, we were kind of just seeing the early bits of it, early adopters pick up on it, but now it's definitely happening a lot more. We've crossed the chasm. We're way past the green and ripe state of it all. We're seeing widespread adoption, almost to the point where you're almost left behind if you're not at least thinking about your long-term data security strategy. Now, we just also saw coming out of Splunk Conf that Splunk's got a new SIC integration or a federated search integration with Snowflake. And full disclaimer, our guest, Jake Berkowsky, does work at Snowflake, and Ambilogic does have a pretty first-class citizen integration with Snowflake. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to really answer the question, what is it that we really need here? And why are more and more folks picking up on this? So first of all, Jake, welcome to the pod. We're so excited to have you here.
Alex, thanks for having me.
I just got my very first pumpkin spice latte. Have you broken that yet?
I have not, actually. I've been drinking iced coffee. I spent the last 7 years in Boston, so kind of picked up that habit.
Oh, very nice. And are you a black coffee drinker, or just are you like it with cream?
Oh no, completely black.
Oh, bland. Okay. But let's start with the classics. How did you get into security, Jake? What are you working on these days over at Snowflake?
Oh man, I think, security, like a lot of people in this industry, I just kind of fell into it. Used to run up a cloud consulting company, and would you believe that people wanted, to do security work? And as a good consultant, I would always say, of course we can do that.
Yeah.
And then the next thing here I am with a master's and a CISSP in it, and built a nice security practice. And then one of my friends really tricked me. He said, you should come over to Snowflake. We're building this wonderful thing around security data lakes. So, one thing led to another, and here I am.
Was there ever a crossover with like the Omer days when Omer Singer was there?
There was, actually. So Omer was here. Omer was here right when I joined for the first year I was here. Okay. He was one of the people who interviewed me.
That's fantastic. Oh, definitely miss Omer. Omer's off. I think he's still in stealth. He's building a new thing, which I'm so excited to see when it does come out of stealth. They've been building for a while.
Yeah, I'm sure he has a ginormous backlog of LinkedIn posts that he's just ready for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope he's watching today, Omer.
Hi, Omer. Shout out, Omer. Okay, well, let's talk about data lakes. Let's talk about that. Yeah. Let's lean into those security data lakes. The reasons why people adopt data lakes in the first place, when it's probably time to adopt a data lake. I've seen a lot of also, SIEM vendors emerge claiming that they've got their own sets of data lakes, like, we have a data lake too in our back end, right? But then there's also some players that kind of bolt on top of existing data lake, general purpose data repos like Snowflake. I want to talk about all of those different, models and deployment patterns that have come about, and when maybe it is a best fit scenario to go with one or the other. I'm inspired. That really inspired my next upcoming LinkedIn post, which I don't know when I'll post, before this episode hits or after. We'll have to see about that. But in your view, what do you think is actually driving teams down the path to adopt a security data lake, right? And also last year, they were going down that path, but maybe they were too green. But now I definitely see it more. I want to hear it from your side and what you see on the Snowflake side.
So, I've been at Snowflake kind of working on this for about 3 years. Before that, actually, I was one of the early wannabe adopters, having kind of brought in a very legacy platform to one of my customers, realizing they just kind of used it out of the box. I'm thinking to myself, why don't they just use a database? But I think a lot of people approach this from more of the threat detection side. They're looking at these kind of, when you're Googling around and looking for security data lake, you're seeing things about cost savings. You're seeing things about scalability. But when you actually talk to the CISOs who actually understand it and actually want to go down this path, What it comes down to is really the fact that they've realized that they have a data problem. So I'll tell a little bit of the origin story of why Snowflake sells this. Actually, we didn't invent this. This wasn't let's go into security, right? How do we do that? It was actually one of our very large customers, a large financial service, well-known institution, had essentially realized they had a data problem. So their head of security walks across the hall, goes to the head of data, says, "Well, what do you guys use?" And, the person leaves up their data, says, "Oh, we use Snowflake." Security says, "Yeah, okay, we'll use that." Right? Just simple as that. Doesn't tell anyone it's Snowflake until one weekend. All of a sudden we see all this data coming in and everyone starts freaking out. This was before my time, and starts going, did they break something? Did we break something? Are they going to be angry? Do we have to refund them? And of course gets on the phone and they said, no, we're bringing in security data. And so, of course somebody took notice. And that was kind of the first time that we noticed that our customers were doing it. Flash forward, it's still happening, right? I mean, this is something where, I'll meet with, my job is to just meet with, I'm an architect at Snowflake, principal architect with the field CTO. So I run up applied cybersecurity. So essentially, my job is to really just meet with all of our big customers, smaller customers, startups, and really just kind of not just talk about it, but listen, kind of share. Almost, I like to joke that I steal what one customer does and I tell it to another one. And it's still happening to this day where a lot of customers are realizing that they have a data problem and they need to use the data people's tools. They need to use the data people's architectures. Couple of years ago, every conversation I had was telling people what a security data lake is. Now, Alex, to your point, a lot more people are coming to me and they say, yep, we brought our data person, or even we brought our data person who reports into the security team. We have real questions. We just want to know about your opinion toward these 3 normalization standards, things like that. So I'd say you're right. We are seeing just a huge uptick as people are realizing that not only do they have this problem, but they have the tools already to solve them.
And what is the problem? Is it getting data in? Is it not having enough money to use all the data they wish that they could be using? Because we hear time and time again that half the data is left outside of their SIEM. So and then now with the more federated search integration, straight up players like Query AI, but also integrations with bidirectional integrations. Well, you'll have to tell us more about that. Is it a bidirectional query federated search integration with Snowflake? They have no choice almost, right? To tap into this access, right? To tap into this ability to have visibility. Like, can you expand more on the problem? Is it a cost issue, or is it just or is it the pipeline issue? We see there's a bunch of pipeline vendors being acquired. Is it getting data in the problem, or is it just using it in general?
I mean, people realize this for different reasons. Sometimes it is a cost issue. It's this issue where their bill keeps coming up. Well, I like to joke that the issue is that the cloud happened, right? Because we were all fine. We were on-prem. Everything was scalable, predictable. And then all of a sudden the cloud came, and now we have about, security people. We fought it tooth and nail. And then of course now there's, 10 times as much logs as there used to be. Regulations are making people hold on to it for 10 times as long, or 7 times as long, or however long.
Oh, and absolutely. Now, with large scale retention requirements. Very large.
It's massive, and it's not just putting it on tape. You actually have to do something with it, especially if you're looking at something SolarWinds or Log4j. So these things have started to happen. But on the plus side, the cloud has kind of become table stakes. So like where we used to fight it, now, what do you mean I don't have unlimited storage? Like things are great. Forget cost effective, just the ability to store as much as you want. Then the performance and all these things have kind of made people realize, okay, maybe a data platform is the right tool to solve whatever challenge I have. In some cases, it's detection. In some cases, it's data silos. I talked to one company, very large company actually, that actually, I'll name them because they spoke at our summit. So Okta actually runs all of their own detections natively on Snowflake. This came from general counsel. They needed to look up things for subpoenas better, right? So
we love anytime an organization loves to build their own detections.
Well, exactly, and that's why we work so well together, right? So I mean, working with Anvil Logic it's always because, right, there's someone who says like, no, I just want to build my own thing, but I don't really want to build my own thing. That they get into the whole, well, do I have to build something to schedule? What about signal correlation? All the parts that they didn't think about, right? But it doesn't mean that everyone's solving the same problem, right? A data platform by nature is generic, right?
Yep.
Could be, I need to search something. I need to build a dashboard on something.
Yep.
I just want to run this one type of thing through a model about 700,000 times, right? And that's where the platform comes in.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we're seeing that now, right? It's time to start treating security like a data problem. Yet these silos are still universal, right? And you can ask yourself, like, why are we still seeing silos in 2025? Like, why is that still so hard to kill? Funny that you brought up cloud, because I almost kind of see it as, well, are data lakes the new cloud? I mean, quite literally they are, but I'm saying, do you remember back in, I don't know, the 2012, 13, when I couldn't even walk into a on-site with a customer and say the word cloud because they're like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't even want to talk about cloud. And now it's just the standard. Like, I think that's where we're headed with data lakes.
I think it's funny. There are two things that I always joke about that always gets a good laugh. The first is WAFs, and then the second is the idea of a proper, right, of knowing where all your data lives, right, of actually having all of your information in one place, of having asset management is the cornerstone of security, is the old joke. But that's the idea, is that we have all these systems. You look at these companies that have been around forever, that have been digitalized forever, that have been on the cloud even for over a decade at this point. And their systems are distributed, right? There's multiple tools, there's multiple platforms. Not everybody knows about where every log is until something breaks.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't need to, right? It's not economical to centralize everything, right? So the
Interesting.
idea is,
For a traditional SIEM store, you mean like in centralizing it with a SIEM's kind of private data store?
yeah, centralizing in a SIEM,
Yeah.
even centralizing in a data platform. Right?
Yeah.
There's just going to be data that lives places. Some of this infrastructure is very legacy. The person who created it is long since retired.
Yeah. That's
Right,
true.
and then economically speaking, does it really pay to get people to move things? Does it pay to even figure out where the SSH key is to get into that server that maybe has logs? It may pay, it may not. And so, like it or not, we're going to have those silos. A lot of times for technical reasons, a lot of times for business reasons.
But is it more of a technical reason, or is it more about the business reasons, like the org structure behind it all? Because it's getting easier and easier for any department unit, because some high up executive said they need an application by yesterday and they're going to spin it up, and that creates another log source. So like, what makes it so hard to address these silos? I would say that the technical reasons are out of the question here. Like, we've figured out the storage versus compute problem. Like, modern data lakes provide the tech for it, but getting it over the hunch of getting an organization to agree on this strategy is now it's better, but definitely I think that's much more difficult than the tech problem.
I agree. I think those organizational issues are what's causing the biggest amount of friction.
Yeah.
Right? We live in a world where it's economics matters, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's I always like to say, my job when people ask me as a security person, especially my friends, oh, you're probably angry at this. Is this safe? Is this? I say, my job, it is not to make people safer. It is to advise on risk, right?
Yeah. But also, I think it's also the tech too, because
Yeah.
if customers, they want to maximize the most out of their investment, and sometimes they have done that year after year in like a 10-year SIM project. I'm seeing that with one of my customers right now. It's like they've been on Splunk for 12 years, and removing all of the webs off of it's like really, really baked tentacles it has across many different parts of the org, even outside of security, is almost impossible to do. So that's why I do really believe that, Splunk has no choice but to offer, this federated search integration, right? I keep seeing more and more of that come about as well. Were you in Boston last week?
I was actually.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about this integration.
Yeah, so it's very, very exciting. So we've been working with Splunk we've been trying to work with them for a number of years on this. Really just trying to, actually, you're right, solve technical problems here, because
Yeah,
right, when you're talking about, forget everything that goes into it. I mean, let's just take a component of it, SPL to SQL. Those are different languages.
completely.
That's not translating from English to French. That's translating from English to Zebra. I mean, it's right, different ways of thinking, different types of database backends, which are good for different things, right? I mean, you people who have used both Splunk and Snowflake realize that there are benefits to both types of backends. And so, I mean, Splunk has had this federation on their strategic roadmap for a long time now. I think I remember it had been 2 years ago at RSA, right? Gary Sue gets up and tells everybody about, during the keynote, tells them about how federation is going to be, right? This is where we're going. And it originally launched with AWS. So really excited that we're launching this now with Snowflake
Yeah.
because, well, we'll see it for multiple things, right? Not all data goes into the SIEM, but there's a lot of data that people are going to want anyway. I mean, if we're
Yeah.
talking about, I used to say HR data. No one ever puts their HR data into the SIEM, nor would you.
No,
But you're
it's
doing an
hard.
insider. Yeah,
It's hard to parse actually Salesforce data into SIEMs.
yeah,
No,
yes,
no one has
Salesforce
heard it.
data, Workday. You're doing an insider threat investigation. You're going to want access to that,
Yeah.
and you're not going to want to give everyone access to everything. You're going to want some sort of an intelligent
Yeah.
access control on that one. And that's a great. The data's already in Snowflake. You're going to want to do something where Splunk is great for let me query everything right now, but okay, what happens when I want to query, I want to pick out an IP from 3 years worth of firewall logs, right? All of a sudden Snowflake becomes the correct solution. So kind of seeing those together, it's not just a matter of connecting discrete data sources, but it's a matter of
Mhm.
connecting two different technologies that think about things differently.
That's very powerful for customers. It seems to go against the Splunk kind of being able to profit on ingest, accounting for the year-on-year data growth that naturally happens. And I think but they're at a point where they have no choice but to integrate. And that's the first time that I think like the customer is benefiting in this situation.
I
Which is
think Yeah, no, definitely right. I think it's one of those few times where it's everybody wins.
everybody. Well, I don't know about Splunk. Well, I mean, they're not going anywhere. But what was I going to say? That it still makes them sticky because, people that are Splunkers, they're diehard Splunkers. I mean, it's almost culty. Like people love Splunk and they will never probably rip it out, which is great. But I have a couple questions about the bidirectional integration
Sure.
with Snowflake and this federated query. Like, is it actually bidirectional? Like, can you query from both sides, or how does it actually change like the day-to-day investigation for SOC teams?
Yeah, so we already have several solutions of how we see customers kind of doing that federated approach between Snowflake and doing Splunk. So Anvalogic obviously being one of those, probably the most popular solution there, right? Is these federated SIMs that sit on top of both, right? So now we're actually choosing where the detections run. Again, right? Some detections are better run in Splunk, some are better run in Snowflake. So sitting on top of that, you can run either. That's
Mhm.
one integration. I wouldn't even call that bidirectional. That's something sitting on the outside. That's
Yeah,
true federation. It's
true.
funny because they said, "Oh, Splunk might not like this, Snowflake might like that." Well, at the end of the day, the reason everyone does anything is because our customers want it. And I think doesn't matter what company you are, if you're Anvil, Snowflake, Cisco, AWS, Microsoft, right? At the end of the day, the customers are going to look at it, they're going to say, "No, look, I'm not centralizing every single one of all of my processes, right? Every big company is multi-cloud. Every big
Yeah,
company has multiple security tools, regardless, right,
better just
of
to use them all.
what they'll
Yeah.
say publicly. And so kind of leaning into that federation, right? It's really a matter of what have our customers been doing. We've had federation with Splunk for years through our JDBC driver over DB Connect with customers
Okay.
writing macros to go in from one to the other to make it a little bit easier to query. Customers building dashboards in Splunk. One of the ways where I see customers doing their first Splunk augmentation and they're not even aware of it is they want to monitor Snowflake. And
Mhm.
so, Snowflake can have a whole lot of logs, right? I mean, our
Yeah.
audit logs are absolutely massive. And so why not run those? What we always recommend to our customers is run the detections in Snowflake, put the events into Splunk.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of that, people don't even think about that, right?
I was
But
just
that's
alert,
essentially just that
there.
federated technology.
Yeah. So is there cross-platform like correlation happening? Like if you've got some maybe very expensive feeds in Snowflake because it's just cheaper to put them there, and then some in Splunk, maybe because it has a cheaper integration. Is there cross-platform correlation like happening? Because if it's just a federated query, to me it seems very ad hoc, very not proactive.
Well, that's the thing is that as we're still, so we announced that, we're in the process of building this. The actual official announcement date
I think
is
it's
going to be,
it's coming out next
next
year, right?
year. Yep,
Yeah.
with actually letting people start to try this in just a few months from now. So we're still a few months away from even letting people try this, but there's a lot to work out there, right? I mean, we kind of figured out what we can do, but the question is what are our customers really going to demand? Are they okay with just a query? Or like you said, are there going to be more, what else do we need to build in there, together to make sure that like we're really, really giving that full experience?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to kind of go back to the different SIM deployment patterns, SIM alternatives that I've seen out there on the market today. This is actually the inspo for my upcoming LinkedIn post. We talked a little bit about, you and me, we were riffing off of the legacy SIM approach, the monolithic approach where you've got the data store inside of the SIM and it kind of locks it in there. And the more data you need to put there, the more it tends to be, right? Which is what can get very, very pricey the moment you start to accumulate more data, which always happens. The important considerations and factors to think about these approaches, obviously detection quality, the lock-in, vendor lock-in aspect, and of course, the risk of it all. It is the most, in our experience, the most costly model because it really does, depend on your ingest. It's ingest-based licensing. And I think that's what really drew a lot of momentum behind the rise of the data lake movement. The detection quality, I like to, what I've been calling like the list of shelfware detections that come with those traditional SIMs, where the rules are written but never really put to real use. They make like the most common denominator set of detections where it makes it such that they're super stale, they're outdated, they're inactive, and they're not so tailor fit to their unique environment, which is why I love hearing that Okta makes their own environment, because that's any organization that makes their own environment are in the best position to protect their org, knowing what they know about their unique org and building around that. So we're seeing these rise in terms of alternatives. Now, talking a little bit more about the pipeline, I brought that up earlier. In order to offset some of that cost from those, monolithic SIM players, you could potentially hack it with like a cribble, right, and send your data off to an S3, or maybe send your data off into Snowflake. But if you're not actively correlating across the two, it still becomes offshore data, right? In our language, very, very dark data, and in that case, the risk is very high. I want to tap your brain on this one. Because the DIY SIM is something that Omer actually talked a lot about, and is when people just say, no, I've got the dev, I've got the talent, I want to build my own SIM because I am just like an incredible developer, and I'm just going to do it myself because these other SIM players don't actually know my organization, my environment. I'm just going to build the damn thing myself. Like, have you seen this approach less over the years now since you've been at Snowflake, or more?
It's funny because the lines are kind of blurry on this one, right? What counts as building your own SIM? Is running a couple of detections and then sending them somewhere else counting as your own SIM,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what as soon as you bring Anvil logic in, is that still building your own SIM? Even though
That would be the last
taken a lot of it away.
Overlay approach.
Well, I've talked to customers that think it is. I mean, so it's obviously right. It's always arguing. I like to the question I always ask when I meet a new vendor, a new startup, especially. I say, "Is your product a SIM?" And tell me why not. But 6 months later, so I hear you're a SIM. But so when we take that DIY approach, it's actually very interesting because I see two types of customers doing it.
Okay.
The first is just what you mentioned, is the Oktas of the world, the Comcasts of the world. They have this massive problem, massive amount of technical talent, and they are not only prepared to do this massive technical undertaking, but it's justifiable because they are unique. Right.
Yeah.
But then we see the complete other side of the spectrum.
They've got a lot of custom applications, right, that don't have native integrations with these SIM players. Like, they come with the major log sources support, and it's great that they keep up with all those parsers, but they're never going to have parsers for a custom application that's also natively homegrown. If they're a homegrown shop, they're going to have a lot of custom crap that is going to need to be sent to the SIM, and they're not going to have a parser for it. That's why they want to build a SIM as well.
Nowadays, too, with AI, you see a lot of especially ones like actually the first one I saw was Anvilogic. I had actually the first to build kind of that I'd seen was that, no, just send us your logs. We'll have the AI figure out the schema and we'll suggest it, right? So that's, to me, is the new trend. But when we see the DIY people, there's another side of it. There are people who have, and I don't want to say small, I want to say simple
Uh-huh.
architectures. Good example is like Rippling, for instance.
Okay.
So Rippling built their own SIM as well. They were actually, they had looked, some people had used some of these other data lake centric tools in the past. They looked and they said, no, 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 we know what we're doing here. We're comfortable. We're a couple of AWS people. There's not too many of us. A SIM is too much for us. What we really want to do is build our own detections. We're comfortable. We're going to do this part in AWS. We're going to do this part in
Mm,
Snowflake. And so they're good because they actually very much know their data. They
okay.
don't need the additional complexity. But here's the thing, right? They didn't get to that. They didn't get to that. They're not a small company, but they're not exactly at Octascale, right?
Mm.
Where all of a sudden it's like, oh, do I need to invent my own, or Snowflake scale? Do I need to, submit a patent for our, threat prioritization process? Like, so once you're in the middle is typically where you see more people going down the buy approach or integrating more of that. But, like I said, it's really, the fun of it is that, if there was one solution, we wouldn't be having this
We
conversation.
wouldn't be
We'd
even
just be
here.
doing the same
Yeah.
thing.
No, we're still having this. It's 2025. We're still having this problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it keeps me employed and interested.
The the last disadvantage I wanted to call out that we haven't touched on is I think it goes back really to the shelfware piece of it all. At least the legacy SIMs, they're building onto their rule library, right? They're worried they already have a productized, SIM where to make it such that they can have maybe one or two or three, I don't know, threat researchers build in some TTP, driven rules accordingly based on emerging threats, but not necessarily all. That's not always the case, right? Whereas the DIY approach, you gotta be worried about maintaining the damn thing, let alone
Yeah.
thinking about the security context on top of it, and then even validating whatever detection that you're building is that still like periodically triggering, right? And that is so difficult to keep up with, and why I also think a lot of AI as well is going to help with a lot of these integration fix validations, plumbing work, right? Pipeline players, keeping the data feeds healthy, that's feeding the rule. That is where we should be solving the problem into things. And the DIY approach is not going to help you with that. If you're just worried about like keeping the whole thing HA,
No.
I would go against this approach for anybody thinking about it.
Well, it's very hard, right? Because I mean, even if Snowflake, right, once you get beyond simplicity, because even if Snowflake's fully managed, we're about infrastructure,
Yeah.
data pipelines, the data could change. Your custom application logs are going to probably change every time you push something. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. And again, nobody, when they think about it, they're like, I'm going to write my own detections. But they're not thinking about the things like, I'm going to build my own scheduler. I'm going to build my own, like these are harder things. So that's why I actually see some people right? There's no reason you can't switch from the DIY to when it gets too complicated to bringing in that hybrid overlay. I mean, this is why I like working with you guys. You bring an Anvil logic and it's okay. Well, I like to say it's one of those, we're really all of our connected partners. It's one of those things where you still get the opportunity to, unlike those closed platforms, to just open the hood, right?
Yep. Exactly.
I get this thing in my nice GUI, which I didn't have to write, but there's always going to be somebody who said, no, I don't want that. Just give it to me. I just want the raw data of what that detection looks like because I need that thing that I'm the only customer in the world who wants. It's like, all right, I mean, it's your data. Go pull it from there, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that hybrid solution is just, for a lot of people that I talk to, it's just what gets them really excited.
For no, for sure. And especially, I keep coming back to this because it really is about detection quality. And I mean, after all, this is a detection engineering podcast. Rule quality, right? I
Yeah.
also saw Detections AI, a new organization, VC backed. They're community driven right now. They're sourcing a lot of community, but I think eventually they're going to have some kind of a vendor model. We need to be putting a lot more accountability on these rule libraries. Everybody that has a SIM or has some kind of even a subscriber model like ourselves, our other peers in the space, our other competitors, I would go as far as saying we all have our rule libraries, right? Everybody and their grandmas has one, but who is keeping us honest about which ones are actually good? Like I am willing to make a petition for all vendors to come with a very, productionized percentage, like exposure of how much of our detections are actually being used out in production today. In our case, it's all of them. And how precise are the, I know there's specific like kind of math that involved with alert quality and accuracy, like precision and recall scoring. We should all be coming out with that because yeah, it's very easy for people to just sit and think about detections, writing up detections all day. You could even ask ChatGPT to do that. But how operationalized is it and actually ready for prod is it? And I am willing to stand like to die on that hill.
I like that. That's analogous, right? We always say more data isn't better. Better data is better. It's the same thing with more detections isn't better. Better detections is better.
Yeah.
Huh.
So the hybrid overlay approach. Of course, there's some players out there that connect, with Snowflake as well and Splunk. Are you seeing more orgs go all into Snowflake, or the hybrid model where they kind of work in both worlds, Snowflake and a SIEM? Like, what do you think is taking more popularity right now? Will Snowflake ever replace Splunk or just extend it?
Oh, all the time. I mean, our original play was actually replacing Splunk.
Okay.
And then it was only later, that we realized that the augment approach was so strong.
Yeah.
Originally, we would try to tell people, yeah, just switch your SIMs. You're probably thinking about it anyway, and plenty of
Yeah.
people do. But now we're seeing the two things that we've seen the biggest growth in. Yeah, have I'd say the biggest thing since I joined
Hmm.
that we've seen growth in has been the idea of SIM augmentation, not just with Splunk. I mean, let's talk about Azure Sentinel, right? That's
Yeah.
90 days of a lot of your logs for free.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you want to take advantage of that, right? I mean, but that's the thing. That's also not going to ever be your entire strategy, or shouldn't be. Well, it is for some people, and if they're happy, God bless them. But for a lot of people, it's not, right? So we that's really what not just Splunk, but modern solutions will kind of necessitate, right? The idea of needing to federate, and
Yeah.
that's just for detections, right? We have so many other things that we do nowadays beyond detections.
I'm comforted by the fact that regardless, there's an option for you. And while you're on your way to a full replacement, you have kind of this dual path hybrid that can keep everything working, keep nothing like unmonitored in the meantime, right? Until you're fully there, until you're fully ready to make that jump.
Yeah,
Your Splunk exit strategy. I've had many customers tell me like they're looking to get off Splunk by October. And we're like that. Oh, you sure? But then we have customers saying no, we're never going to get off Splunk. We tried another competitor. I won't say the name. And the whole time I was like, I miss Splunk, and they went right back to Splunk. And so it's here and there. I mean, there's obviously best fit situations for everybody, but at the end of the day, detection quality and manipulation of what you can do with security, I think it hasn't been as explored as to its full potential as much as it could be using data, the powerful query language of SQL
yeah,
because and it can do so much more. Like that's what it's made for, like a lot of advanced data science types of use cases that we really have not touched on and that other teams outside of security have, like marketing and finance. And some of my friends in marketing tech, like they're taking laps around security because I mean, that maybe is driving them money and they want to really tap into that. And security is seen as a cost center, but I just don't see why we can't just continue pushing more use cases on Snowflake because you can do so much with SQL that you cannot do with SPL.
well,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, exactly. But that's the thing is that how do I put it? People aren't going to the internet to post about all the amazing stuff. Well, actually they are, but they're not necessarily those tweets aren't getting shared, right?
yeah,
With the detection engineers. But I mean, there's such a huge community of people that are doing this. And you
yeah,
had a good point where if you talk about the Martech, we talk about, I talk to quants that say, oh, time series database. Yeah, I have somebody pull stuff out of that so I can put it into SQL. And it's this idea that there's so much you can do and so much that people are doing. People are building, right? Machine learning algorithms. They're built. I mean, when you're
I saw
talking about,
I saw your
yeah,
customer Domino's. That I can say them out loud. They're
yeah.
they're all over they're all over Medium articles, and they're very open about what they do with Snowflake, and they're miles ahead in their customer journey. But I'm like, I want to see those kind of things in security, and I have not seen that yet. I haven't seen anybody impress me.
See, I mean, I could talk about some of the really cool stuff that I've seen. I mean, if we're going to talk about another big joke is anomaly detection, right? Everybody talks about anomaly detection groans like, oh yeah, I don't need that. Like, okay, so it's something's unique. I don't
Yeah.
care. right? But here's one that I've seen. So there's a company I work with called Deep Tempo. They're a Snowflake native app. They're really cool. What they do is they actually took, so LLMs are based on this thing called a transformer architecture, which is just trying to predict what word comes next, essentially, right? I mean, anyone who does AI at Snowflake is going to listen to this and they're just going to be like, Jake, shut up. The SEs hate me. I call Snowflake Big Excel sometimes, but which in my opinion is a huge compliment. You take anomaly detection, right? And we say, okay, well, let's run this. Let's run this through a transformer architecture. Let's train a bunch of logs on it. And now what we're getting is we're getting context there. So now we're saying it's not just about what comes next. It's okay, well, wait, this log, this isn't supposed to come next. That's weird. And now we could say not only is it weird, right? Like statistically, and it is of course mathematic, but we could say this is weird contextually. Then they're going to map that. They're going to say, why is this weird contextually? Right. And that's going to compare to MITRE. And now your anomaly detection that you're having on your logs is not just, well, I don't know, this IP address is unique, right? Which is okay. But is this actual, like, almost similar to a person reading over and saying, well, that's weird. Right. And so we're getting, again, right, these new technologies can be done directly on Snowflake, right?
Yeah.
These, by the way, this isn't its own system. These alerts, by the way, there's some shared customers here, right? That they go right into the SIEM, right, where you're doing your detections. They can go into Anvil logic. So now we're saying, okay, we've brought these different types of analytic workloads. We're bringing everything together, right? Especially if Anvil logic, for instance, or whatever connected SIEM is running in the same place, right? Your data isn't even going anywhere. It's all just kind of using all these workloads that are kind of, one team here, right? I mean, you look at vulnerability management, right? You have multiple, everyone wants to shift left, but, no one's actually tracking. Is the thing that, we've done over here actually, reducing our threat surface in production, right? So that this idea kind of goes well beyond threat detection, but using the same data.
And just for the record, I didn't mean I wasn't impressed by other people. I'm very impressed with what we're doing here.
Oh no, you threw me a straw man, so I just had to go right at it.
No, really. But it is such a much better fit to run AI workloads, right, directly on top of a consolidated, basically alert lake of all of your point detections, all of your tiny little indicators that you may not want to be necessarily warned about, but you want to know when they happen. And if they're all in one place, in the case of Snowflake and us, and running different models on top of those on already really good filtered, separated, like key events of interest, that is a gold mine. And that's how we're tapping into it. That's how all data scientists should be thinking about it. But I'm very much creeping into the AI side of the house, which I wanna get into as well, because it's like kind of split with me. I have some people as in customers and prospects are very much kind of taking it like the cloud story, where it's like, no, their AI governance committees, they want to be very, very extra careful, put all these guardrails around all of their AI projects, and they're not letting them test things out. They're wanting these like 2-hour long board reviews of exactly how we use AI and LLMs and ML and specific kinds of models, like down to the exact like K clustering, like what exactly we're using with their data. And we have to sign all those RFPs and explain and all of that. But then we also have people that are like, from the board down, how are all your employees using AI to increase their productivity? It's like an even split right now. So what are you seeing? Are you seeing the same thing? What are the blockers when teams trying to adopt these AI models in security? Are there any? Is Snowflake making that less painful?
Yeah. So the way I kind of see it is when I talk to CISOs, it's a lot of this. There's so much demand to use AI, and it is coming from the board. Use it.
Yeah.
But remember, there is such a thing as regulation, right? That is the law. You don't break the law. I mean, well, generally speaking, right? I guess, we hope you don't break the law. And so it's kind of you're in between a rock and a hard place, and they're kind of the decision that they're coming to is not, okay, let's go buy 10 AI startups, because there's just so much they have to do there. It's really, am I going to build my own?
Yeah.
Right? Or am I going to go and just use the AI that's in this tool I already have, right? Am I going to use Snowflake's AI, Salesforce AI? And so this security and especially the governance becomes really, really important. And if you can get past that, that's where all of a sudden you can start to have value. I'll give you an example. I was at a conference the other day, and one of the talks was really interesting. It was about audit logs in Amazon Bedrock, right? So you
Okay.
think, okay, I'm going to use Amazon, right? I
Yeah.
already use Amazon. I know the data doesn't leave there, right?
Mhm.
No one ever got fired, right? It's the same thing, right? For using the AWS product. Well, okay, let's talk about governance there. Bedrock has million different models you could choose. Each one logs in its own way, right?
Mhm.
If we think about, right, even going directly to say someone like Anthropic, they just added audit logs, right? And so now you're actually getting to this point where it's like, but I don't need like anything fancy. I just need to track who's doing what.
Yep.
At this
The
point, we're
process. Yep.
prepared to accept the risk.
Hmm.
That's why I like at Snowflake, right? We just have a unified. We just brought the models into Snowflake and just said, you're deploying in here. We're going to give everyone's logs the same way, right? Same place it is. But to me, it's those compliance concerns and the data, especially the security of the data, right? If that data is going to some other processor, forget the risk you're taking on. It's the paperwork you're taking on, right? That's another sub-processor. If you're sending something over Anthropic, like, what if they ran out of CPUs in that region and sent it to another one, And is that
That's true.
region going
That's
for
something you didn't
GDPR
think
data, right? Yeah,
about.
it's a lot of risk. And from what I talk to the CISOs, they know they have to accept it, right? This is not, we're just not going to do this. You can get away with a little bit slowing it down, but otherwise you're going to get steamrolled.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have a problem to clean up.
I
And
think
yeah.
not fair to me. You have a very sober and safe approach to it because I'm more on the other end of the spectrum where I'm like, if you're not already using AI, you're behind. It should just be like a second, like, yes, like absolutely yes. Any blockers in the way of you trying to do so, or execute work with AI should be removed. Like that's how we advance as an industry. Anytime, like, why are we ever going to get to a world where teams stop thinking about like what AI model they're using and then just basically use it to solve the actual problems? Like, why can't we use it to make our alerts suck less or help us reduce our dwell times? Like if AI is in the way of that and it can help us do that, it should just be thrown money and resources. And if we fail, that's okay. We learn from it and we just continue advancing and we take those lessons learned and we continue using it in a better way the next time versus all of these like bureaucracies. So you're thinking about it the right way. You will never see me working in GRC.
Well, to me, that's what's the blocker. You asked what the blocker is, and I don't think it was a technical blocker. I think
No,
the blocker is
I think it's the
entirely
compliance,
procedural.
right? Mm-hmm.
People want to, some people don't have time. That's always the thing, right? Why haven't you used the AI to solve this? I barely can keep up with what I'm doing now, right? And it's like that whole like, yes, I know that the solution is there. Like I'm digging this hole with my hand because I got no time, but there's a shovel. I have no idea how shovels work. I've never heard of it. We'll figure that out when we have a break, right? And you're seeing a little bit of that with AI as well, right? I mean, security team, especially the SOC, is always overworked. And when you see things that right, instead when people actually get a chance to focus on that utility, right, to actually say like, let's just try it, like you just said, right, you see some stuff just works out of the box.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say like, the newest thing I'm trying to tell everybody is that we have agentic SOC at home, right? If you have, so I have this great thing that I show people is, I'll take like actual logs from Anvil Logic, right? Actual events, because the data's there, the logs are there, the detections are there, the rules are there, and
Mhm.
it's all available. And I'll just literally, I have an agent, right? Orchestration. I run it in Snowflake. Some people you can run orchestration outside of it, but I'll run it in Snowflake. And my only prompt is, "You are a security analyst," and then but then we'll just do the investigation. And it's like you don't really need to do much, but now you have an L1, right? Now your L1 is the AI, right? And that can have a huge impact, but you need to see where that ties into the business, right? Because somebody may say, I got this to work, but okay, well, it still costs money to roll it out. I mean, we have 100,000 detections a day, right? We look at 10% of them, right? 100,000 is a lot, but say we look at 10% of our detections. Well, is it better to have more? Maybe. But the reason you have 10% is because someone spent a lot of time doing a risk and reward model and said 10% is the sweet spot of what we can afford. Now the
Yeah.
price has gone down. Does someone really want to do that model again? Right? It takes a compelling event. I was talking to one customer. They were telling me that they had an alert that they thought was no big deal. Turned out there was some serious credential leakage in there. Thank God nothing happened. But when that happened, they said, "Oh, we really do need to look at all of our alerts." Right? So that was that impetus. Right? And without that impetus, unfortunately, without getting hurt, or without seeing something very obviously big coming in the pipeline,
Mhm.
people are just happy doing what they're doing.
Yeah. No, that's very fair. I keep thinking about too, like the all these organizations that have like named or maybe even rebranded as like AI, like anomaly AI, or I don't know. A lot of people are just that are adding AI to their company. I'm like, that's not gonna age well, y'all. Like it should just be a given at this point. It should just be a no-brainer. It should just be like, yes, we're AI first. And it's almost like IBM, like International Business Machines did that age really well when now they're a software. It's just going to be the standard going forward. And it's funny you mentioned that you're seeing a lot of AI SOC hit your feeds as well, or your network. I think in the last week that's all I've been seeing posted on LinkedIn is AI SOC, and this landscape of investigation and search and triage like is truly evolving to that caliber. And I time and time again, like I keep saying the same thing. I almost sound like a broken record at this point. If your alerts aren't getting better, your detections are not getting better, and you're moving fast in the wrong direction, if you just dress up the triage piece with all of this, GPT enrichment, like cool, that's nice. But if the alert sucked in the first place, you're really not making progress, right? If the poor detection is what is the most important part of the problem that we should be solving, and that is something that should also be considered, and that you should make sure you have well and in place and in like nice and under control before you start getting wined and dined by some of these AI SOC alert triage, automate all your L1 autonomously type of players.
It's
Are
funny.
you?
I could take the opposite approach, where it's funny. One of my least favorite words is the word should, right? um, I haven't been on the trenches of a lot of things, especially in the infrastructure side. It should work, or you should do that. But what happens if you have poor detections, right? What happens if you spent years making these poor detections, or that you thought they were good and suddenly they weren't? And you ask, why I'm actually in this job? I used to be a developer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working for an actual tech company, a company that entire business was online, that maintained this platform. And we were moving to the cloud, and the guy who sat next to me was kind of the Linux guy, so I've learned a little bit from him, and I kind of became a little bit of a sysadmin. He quit, and they said, "Jake, you're the new cloud guy." And I said, "Well,
Oh.
shouldn't you hire a person with experience? This is your entire business." And they said, "No, we believe in you." And right. So, I mean, that's the thing. What do you do about people like that who just, in so many companies, their leadership isn't listening? And I think, if you have access, right, if you do have the luxury of having access to good detections, great. If you have the luxury of having that data sitting somewhere where you can do stuff with it, sometimes it is just a matter of, well, what happens if I just throw the AI in it, right? Like, can it, we know it's bad to begin with, and the real best solution is to fix the source, right? Garbage in, garbage out. But
Yeah.
can we at least like get that quick win to get us out from drowning? So I could see it either way, right? I mean, the person who, the architect in me who likes to tell people how to build things right is
Mhm.
screaming, "Oh, garbage in, garbage out." But, sometimes you just got to accept that, like, yeah, this is it.
I think it's easier to build, all these net new things, but who's looking back and cleaning up what already
Um,
exists? Like where is my AI enabled detection engineering workload queue that generates the top three, courses of action to reduce false positives for the last 10 alerts that fired incorrectly? Or where's my AI enabled telemetry gap that identifies, what rules are gonna probably fuck up because the underlying data source that feeds them is broken or changed. Like
yeah.
I want that. I want those problems to be fixed, and we're making progress to making those as well. But that is, it needs to be hand in hand for sure, and that's what I think. I'll change my wording, not should. What I believe would be an impactful strategy.
And I think that companies like Anvil are the ones that should be building it, right? They're the ones who understand it the best, and that's the appropriate place to run that AI.
Well, I appreciate that. And although I really didn't want this to be by any means a sales pitch, but I think that what we see, what we're exposed to, and all of the different, where we're applying AI the pipeline or in the detection building or in the storage piece, or in the triage piece, like we just talked about, vendors do offer a very unique perspective because, you work hand in hand with these really large scale deployments and implementations, like you as a trusted advisor to your customer. So there may have been a little bit of a salesy, accent to this podcast, but overall, I think it was pretty gold. And I really love how pragmatic you are. And I'm still considering whether to make this a product marketing webinar or not, but I think people should know what we're up to. People should know about that Splunk Snowflake integration. But at the end of the day, we still hit the fundamentals, right? Security doesn't need, another 10 more dashboards or point tools. It needs better flow. It needs a good foundation to where that doesn't limit you from using all the data that you want, that doesn't cost more than the breach itself. So I really appreciate the time you spent with us today, Jake. And thank you so much for all this.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Where can folks follow your work? Are you blogging about it anywhere?
I am on Medium. I probably put something out maybe once a month or so. Just Medium, just my name at Jake Berkowsky, one word. My last article has nothing to do with Snowflake or security data lakes. My last article was a presentation I gave at Forward CloudSec. So I love that place. I just present on an MCP servers. And I could tell you about that if you want something that's absolutely nothing to do with detections. It's just, we a little kind of plug for that one, but kind of realized that, when I was reading the MCP spec and it said something like, customers must implement security, my thought was, oh no, they didn't think about security. But in actuality, it was really fun to kind of look into that, understand the actual, what was going on there. What are the tools currently that people have available? What are the models that people think about this? Yeah. What I kind of realized was that all these really cool, attacks that people are publishing, have nothing to do with MCP. They just have to do with, not having good session isolation. So, it's kind of interesting as well, kind of that we actually, the fun part is we have the tools to solve this. People say, oh, this is going to kill everything. This is the worst problem. We actually have the tools to fix it already. So that's kind of my, maybe that's a little bit boring, but
no, that's actually the next path I think that folks are going to be going down. Obviously, they're going down the security data lake path, but I do imagine a world where it's going to be like this new, MCP, have your agent talk to my agent, have your MCP talk to my MCP, and you can, orchestrate tasks accordingly between our tools. I think that's what we're headed to next. And maybe perhaps that could be our next collab on the.
Oh, maybe.
I think it should be. And that's a wrap. To our listeners, if this episode gave you the current state and on the state of data lakes, federated search, made you slightly less angry at your SIEM, definitely consider subscribing to us, sharing it with your detection engineering crew, and leaving us a 5-star review on Spotify. We'll catch you all next time.